she'll listen closely. When darkness wraps the world and dreams begin to stir, you've arrived at the right place. Welcome to Between Dreams and Shadows, the sanctuary of stories that live between sleep and the unknown. Here, every tale is more than a story. It's a portal to hidden worlds, forgotten secrets, whispers from beyond, and shadows that speak as your eyes begin to close. If you're drawn to mysteries, haunting legends, and stories that send shivers down your spine, this channel is your new nighttime ritual. Before we begin, I invite you to become part of this growing nightbound community. Subscribe now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a tale. New stories drop regularly, always under the veil of night. Like this video if you enjoy that chill before sleep. It helps this channel grow and lets me bring you deeper, darker stories. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had a strange dream? Or felt something watching in the dark? Your experience might inspire the next tale now. Take a deep breath, turn off the lights, leave the world behind, and get ready to drift between dreams and shadows. Setting the atmosphere, it was always just past 2 a.m. when the silence would shift. I had started therapy 6 weeks ago, not for insomnia, but for the things that came after I fell asleep. The sessions were strange. Dr. Ellen never asked me about my past. Instead, he focused on the present and the space of my bedroom, the arrangement of objects, the temperature of the room. He called it environmental mapping for subconscious echoes, whatever that meant. After my 4th visit, he told me bluntly, without his usual calm, if you ever dream of the door beneath your bed, do not go near it, and whatever you do, never return. I remember laughing a little, nervously. What door? He didn't answer. His eyes lingered too long on mine. I didn't stop the sessions. Not yet. Tonight, I lay still on the mattress, staring at the ceiling. The cheap glow of my nightlight pooled amber across the room, softening the edges of my dresser, my bookshelves, the wardrobe that never quite closed. The clock ticked, always ticking. Outside, the wind whispered through half-open blinds, and the shadows danced slow and uncertain. There was no sound from the building, no neighbors awake, not even the distant hum of the elevator, the kind of silence that feels too rehearsed. My breathing slowed. I counted each inhale. 7, 8, 9. There it was again. That gentle pressure, like being watched from behind a veil I couldn't lift. At first, it was nothing, just a sensation. That crawling awareness of something not entirely wrong, but off, as if a thought was pressing at the back of my mind. One I didn't want to think. I turned on my side and faced the wall. My eyes traced the framed photo of my sister, the one where her smile never quite reached her eyes. Even that seemed unfamiliar now, her gaze too direct, too knowing. The nightlight dimmed. No, it flickered just once, but long enough to cast a new shape across the floor. Not an object, not something I owned. A silhouette, thin, slightly hunched. Gone the second I blinked. I told myself it was a trick of light, a tired brain, a drifting thought, but I didn't move. I didn't breathe too deeply, because something in the air had changed. A shift so small you wouldn't notice unless you'd been awake for too many nights in a row, unless your mind had become trained to notice the creases in the silence. And I had. I noticed there was something here with me, not loud, not cruel, just waiting. And I had the sudden cold realization. It wasn't the dark that scared me. It was what might be using the dark to watch. The first signs of disturbance the next night. I tried not to look at the wardrobe. I told myself to ignore the silence, to breathe through the unease. But unease doesn't listen to logic. It listens to instinct, primal, unexplainable things. And tonight, my instincts screamed in whispers. It started with something small, almost laughably small. The lamp on my desk tilted, not fell, not toppled, tilted, Subtle, but enough that I noticed its angle had changed. Barely off-center, but different. I hadn't touched it. I was sure of that. I stared at it for what felt like minutes, waiting for it to move again. It didn't. I repositioned it, centered it exactly beneath the shelf, measured it with my eyes, backed away slowly. Then came the shadows. Shadows, by their nature, behave predictably. They stretch, they shrink, they follow. But that night, as the clock passed 2 a.m., the shadows in my room began acting, independently. The tall skeletal shadow cast by my Kotrek drifted left without the light source changing. I watched, mouth slightly open, as if witnessing an insect walk in reverse. I checked the bulb. Solid, unflickering. And yet the shadow kept shifting, reaching toward the edge of my bed. A pressure built behind my eyes, like a silent migraine of disbelief. Was I dreaming? I spoke aloud to test it. Hello? The word echoed, strangely, as if spoken into cloth, muffled, delayed. Nothing answered, but the room felt colder. I left the lamp on that night, and the night after, but it didn't matter. Light didn't stop the movement. Objects started to whisper out of place, slight angles, tiny misalignments. Books not flush with the shelf. My mirror, tilted by 2 degrees. My toothbrush, laid horizontally instead of in the cup. I began documenting it. Every detail. I took pictures before sleep, compared them when I woke. Always something, always small. Was I sleepwalking? Dr. Relin didn't help. When I described the distortions, he said only, "You mustn't engage. Not yet. Just observe. If it wants to be seen, it will make itself known." I remember feeling more betrayed than afraid. I wanted advice. I wanted a solution. But he spoke like an archaeologist studying a ruin no one was supposed to open. By the end of the week, I stopped turning my back to the room when I slept. I started sleeping sitting up, facing outward, watching, not because I thought it would help, but because I wanted it, whatever it was, to know I saw it, even if I didn't understand it. And sometimes, in the reflection of my unplugged television screen, I thought I saw it too. The sound that shouldn't exist. They say sound travels differently in the dark, that our ears adapt, overcompensate to protect us from what we can't see. But some sounds aren't meant to be protected from. The first time I heard it, I was mid-dream. Something warm, shapeless, gone now. But the noise pierced through sleep like a pin through skin, a low hum. Distant, barely perceptible, yet wrong. Not mechanical, not human. It was a tone, not music, not a word. A suggestion of something alive, buried beneath layers of silence. Pressing against the edges of my hearing, I sat up in bed. The clock said 2:16 a.m. The hum stopped. I held my breath, listening. Nothing. I laid back down. WHHHHRRRRRNNN. Closer. Inside the walls. It wasn't a constant sound. It breathed. It pulsed, with deliberate intervals, as if it was searching, probing, communicating in a frequency just beneath meaning. I covered my ears. It didn't help, because the next night, it spoke. Not in words, not exactly, but the hum twisted, stuttered, cracked into syllables that mimicked language. The cadence of a voice trying to remember how to be a voice. "Are you Ruri?" A walk. I flinched. The sound came from under the bed. No footsteps, no crawling, just that voice, woven from static and wrongness. I stayed frozen, arms tight at my sides, and waited. I don't know how long I lay like that. It might have been minutes, it might have been hours. Time broke around that sound. My thoughts cracked like glass under heat. By the time the morning light leaked through the curtains, it was gone. I tried recording it the next night, left my phone on, microphone active, slept with the screen dimmed and the recorder running. When I listened the next day, I heard myself breathing, rolling over once, a cough, and then, "You shouldn't have listened." My voice. but I never said that. I never woke up. The audio ended with silence. No static. Just an eerie void. I sent the file to Dr. Rellin. He didn't reply, but that evening, I received a package on my doorstep. No return address. Just a small box. Inside a note written in hurried slanted script. Block your ears. When it speaks again, do not respond. That is how it knows. Beneath the note was a pair of thick, black, foam earplugs. I tried them, but they didn't stop the sound, because by then, the sound wasn't coming from outside me anymore. It had found its way in. The presence without a face. It's strange how the absence of something can take up more space than its presence. After the voice seeped into my thoughts, silence wasn't comforting any more. It was full of expectation, full of it. I stopped trying to record, stopped asking questions. I just tried to stay still, to obey whatever rule I didn't understand. But the rules kept changing. One night, I left my bedroom to sleep on the living room couch, just for distance, for sanity. At 2:03 a.m., the air shifted again. It was a sensation like being submerged in still water. No sound, no movement, just thick, invisible weight pressing against every part of me. I opened my eyes, and there was nothing in the room, but I felt watched, not by something with eyes. That would have been a relief. What I felt was more invasive, like the idea of being observed had gained form, like awareness itself had decided to crouch in the corner, breathing softly. It didn't want to hurt me, it wanted me to know it was. There my eyes drifted toward the hallway. The light bulb above the entryway flickered once, then something happened that made my blood freeze in place. My bedroom door, which I had locked, opened with a quiet, deliberate click. No wind, no draft, just a slow, human pace of movement, precise, conscious. But when I looked, the hallway was empty, and then I noticed my keys were on the floor, bent, at an impossible angle. I tried to speak, to call out, to scream, but my throat closed. My body understood something my mind refused to accept. I wasn't alone, not now, not anymore. Over the following nights, I started placing small objects at random spots in the room: coins, a pencil, a chess piece from a set I never finished. I told myself it was to check for movement, but deep down, I think I needed to know it wanted to be seen. Every morning, something changed. The chess piece faced a different direction. The pencil rolled 1 inch to the left, the coins arranged in patterns that mimicked letters, but never full words. One morning, I found them spelling this, still awake. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't scared, but because crying felt too human, and I wasn't sure that kind of expression was safe anymore. Dr. Rellin finally responded. Just a text. If it's rearranging, it wants to connect. You've gone too far. You invited it. It sees your attention as permission. I stared at the message for hours. Typed a reply. Deleted it. Typed again. What do I do now? No answer. The presence is in every room now. Not always moving, but always watching. I feel it when I blink, when I sleep, when I dream, and when I look in mirrors. I never make eye contact with myself anymore, because I'm not sure it's still me on the other side. The unspoken warning: I tried not to see the patterns. But you can't unnotice a rhythm once. It begins to echo inside your skull. Each night, the disturbances became more deliberate, predictable in a way that made the unpredictability feel intentional. It was like being on the receiving end of a game I hadn't agreed to play. Always, at 2:03 a.m., the light would dim, never turn off, just fade, like it was being watched from the other side. Then came the rearrangements, the coins, the chairs, the door slightly more ajar than before, then silence. Pressurized silence. A silence that pulsed in my ears like a heartbeat. But it was the fourth stage that unraveled me, because after the silence came the presence. Not visible, not even tactile. but its awareness entered the room like smoke enters lungs, quiet, but irreversible. I tried leaving the apartment, slept at a friend's place, stayed in a hotel one night, but wherever I went, it followed. I knew it did. Not because it moved anything, but because it started whispering my name in reflections. The hotel mirror was clean, untouched, but on the third night, just after 2 o'clock, condensation formed, though the room was cool and dry, and in that fog, the mirror bloomed a shape. My name, written backward, traced with an invisible finger. Emily. I didn't scream. I couldn't. Screaming would have broken whatever invisible barrier still existed between me and it. Instead, I wiped the mirror with trembling hands, and saw something that broke me far more than any scream could. In the reflection, my lips were moving, but I wasn't speaking. It was using me. Dr. Rellin answered that time, a short call. His voice was different, faster, tighter, like a man running out of breath. It's mapping you, creating a behavioral loop. You need to break it before the loop completes. Loop? What loop? They only attach to people who notice patterns. You gave it a structure. Now it's testing limits. Once it finishes, ... it replaces. I remember whispering, replaces what? But the line had already gone dead. I looked around the room, and that's when I saw it. Every disturbance had been pointing somewhere. The coin on the bookshelf, the chairs turning, the shadows drifting. They all faced the same direction, toward the corner of my bedroom, the one that never caught the light quite right, the one where nothing ever sat for long, no matter how many things I placed there. That corner was empty now, but the shadows leaned into it, the air bent around it, and I realized it wasn't a corner, not anymore. It was a doorway, one I had never seen, one that had always been waiting. And I remembered what Dr. Rellin told me so long ago. If you dream of the door beneath your bed, do not go near it. I hadn't dreamed of it, but somehow it had become real anyway, and I was already too close. The moment of truth. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was afraid of what I'd see if I closed my eyes, but because I was afraid of what might see me if I did. The corner of my room where the shadows clung too long, where the furniture refused to stay, was changing. Slowly, subtly, as though it were being rewritten. The straight edges of the wall had begun to curve, ever so slightly. Just enough to make the geometry feel unnatural, alien, like someone had made a room from memory, and remembered it wrong. I left the lights on. Every single one. I sat against the headboard, earplugs in, white noise playing on my phone. I thought maybe I could overwhelm it, drown it out, deny it the satisfaction of my attention. But when 2:03 came, the white noise shifted. It warped, distorted like a vinyl being stretched too far, and in that slow decrescendo of static, I heard my own voice say, "Come look, Emily." Not a suggestion, a command. The earplugs didn't help. The noise wasn't around me anymore. It was in me. My chest tightened, fingers digging into the bedsheets. I wanted to run, to scream, to do anything but what I did next. I stood, slowly, hypnotically, not under control, yet not entirely forced. A third state of being, like a puppet granted the illusion of free will. I walked toward the corner. The wall there rippled when I reached it, only slightly, like breath behind a curtain. The ripples began to hum, not a sound I heard, but something I felt through the bones of my skull, like it was sinking to me, or pulling me in. My hand lifted, not fully mine. I placed my palm on the surface. The wall yielded like skin, and then I saw it, a seam, thin as a paper cut, running from floor to ceiling. The door beneath my bed. It wasn't a metaphor. It wasn't a dream. It had found its way into the waking world, and it had waited for me to understand. Because only those who understand can be taken, and only those who look can be seen. I backed away, breath shallow, heart hammering so loudly I thought it might rupture something. And then the wall spoke, without sound. Choose. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't a warning. It was a fact. I stood there, trembling, and realized this was the moment Dr. Rel had prepared me for. Not a climax, not an escape, just ... a decision. I could leave the apartment, turn away, sleep, somewhere else, pretend this never happened, or I could open the door, find out what waited on the other side, learn why it chose me, why it whispered in my own voice, why the pattern had been building like a wave held in place. And as I stood there, fingers inches from the seam, one final thought anchored itself in my mind. What if opening the door isn't the danger? What if the danger is leaving it closed, and never knowing what I've already let in? The inevitability of darkness. I opened it, not dramatically, not with shaking hands or gasps of horror, just quietly. The seam in the wall parted at my touch like damp paper, and the surface behind it folded inward, not into another room, but into something that shouldn't have been there at all. There was no light, no air, no gravity, only a sensation like stepping through still water and discovering you can't feel your own feet anymore. I didn't fall. I floated, or rather, something pulled me forward, though I never took a step. Inside, the space was cold, not in temperature, but in emotion, like the absence of thought, the hollow between two heartbeats. I couldn't see, not with my eyes, but I perceived the place through memory, through feelings I had never felt, as though someone else's nightmares were being stitched into my understanding. It felt familiar, like I had always known it was here, and then I heard it, not a whisper, this time, a chorus. Thousands of voices layered atop one another, not in harmony, but in perfect, paralyzing unity. We are what waits. You let us in. You looked when you shouldn't have. Now you are seen. You are part. I wanted to scream, but my body was no longer entirely mine. I reached up and saw my fingers trailing behind slightly, like light bending in water. My skin was still there, yet somehow translucent, echoed in layers. Each motion I made rippled outward a fraction of a second later, like a delay between mind and self. I wasn't alone inside the space. Shapes moved at the edges of thought, tall, thin silhouettes with no mass, gliding soundlessly. They didn't approach. They didn't need to, because they were already in me. That's when I realized the presence I had felt for weeks. It wasn't a visitor. It was an anchor, a seed, and every sleepless night, every whispered distortion, every moment I doubted my reality, that was it growing. I wasn't being haunted. I was being inhabited. I turned, tried to move back through the seam, but the entrance had changed. It wasn't a passage anymore. It was a mirror, and in that mirror, I saw myself. Not how I was, but how they saw me. A puppet with no strings, a vessel that had agreed without knowing, and worse, I saw the reflection smile, but I didn't. My face stayed still, only the reflection smiled back, and then it raised its hand and pressed it against the glass. My hand, a perfect match, only its fingers were just a little too long. The seam closed behind me with the softness of a held breath, and I understood this wasn't a place you escape from. It was a place that follows you out. The fear that stays. They say fear fades with time, that the mind reshapes trauma, sandpapers the sharp edges. But what they don't tell you, what no one tells you, is that some fears don't want to fade. Some fears stay awake. I returned to my apartment days ago, or maybe longer. Time is unreliable, no more of a suggestion than a fact. Everything looks the same. My bed, my books, my clothes hung up exactly how I left them. But it's not the same. I am not the same sometimes. When I pass by a mirror, there's a half-second delay, like the reflection is still considering whether it should follow my movement or act on its own. Sometimes, I hear my own voice whisper to me from another room, even though I haven't spoken in hours, and sometimes, most chilling of alley. Find the door in my wall open again. Just a crack, just wide enough for something to look through. I've stopped trying to block it. Doors don't need hinges when they're written into your mind. Dr. Rellin's number is disconnected now. His office is empty. No forwarding address, no mention of him on any registry. Like he was never real. Or maybe he was, and he opened his door too, and maybe he's still watching, just like I am. Because that's what they do. They watch. From mirrors, from shadows, from thoughts that shouldn't feel foreign but do. The real terror isn't that they follow you. It's that they become you. So slowly, so completely, that you don't even realize the transition is over until you blink, and your eyes don't close at the same time, until you smile, and the corners of your mouth don't match, until you whisper your name aloud, and someone else answers in your voice. I don't sleep anymore. Not because I'm afraid of the dreams, but because I know that when I do, I'm not the only one dreaming. And sometimes, if I wake to suddenly, I can still feel them pulling me back soon, me back still. And I listen, and in the dark, just before dawn, I whispered to the nothing that lives inside me, "You win," but it never answers, because it doesn't have to. It's already here, and I think, somehow, it always was. What do you think really happened behind the door? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and, if you dare, explore another tale before bed. Your nightmares are waiting.